Now you may have noticed when we were talking about superclasses and subclasses that we might have a method by the same name like deposit that shows up in our checking account and in our bank account. Let's talk a little bit more about methods that have the same name. There are two concepts here that we'll talk about: overriding and overloading. They both involve methods with the exact same name. So let's get into the details of these. Overriding occurs if there's a method in a subclass that has the exact same name and the exact same signature as a method in a superclass. Signature is the order of parameters, and whether they're strings or doubles or ints, it's the number and type of parameters in a particular order. So let's say in the bank account class, we have a method called deposit. And deposit takes one double parameter. In the checking account class, which extends bank account, suppose we have something called deposit that takes one double parameter. Notice I've called the parameter by a different name, but these have identical signatures. Java knows if you're passing something into deposit and you put in 100.0, oh, that's a double, and I'll bind it over to the variable a. Or that's a double, and I'll bind it to the variable amt. These have the same signature. If one has the same signature for the deposit method as its superclass, then when we ask a checking account object to execute a deposit method and pass a double parameter, it's going to look first in the checking account. If it finds it, it will use it. If it doesn't find it, it will go up to its parent, the superclass bank account, and use that. In this case, we have overridden deposit. There's a deposit in bank account, there's a deposit in checking account, and this one in checking account overrides what's in bank account. Now you can't have the same signature in the same class. You can override a method from a superclass, but you can't have two methods with the same name and signature inside a single class. The following couldn't both be present in the same class. You couldn't have my method that takes a string and an int and another version of my method that takes a string and an int. Think about it. When you tried to execute this, Java would get hopelessly confused. Which one do I pass the string variable and the int variable to? I've got two choices. When we're overriding from a superclass, the choice is clear. Start at the lowest level of the hierarchy. If you find it, use it. If you don't, check the next level. But if they're at the same level of the hierarchy and they have the same signature, Java can't resolve it. Therefore, Java does not allow it. You can't have two methods with the same name and the same signature in the same class. But you can have a method with the same name and a different signature. That's called overloading, making the name serve double duty or triple duty. And that can happen either in the same class or in a subclass. This is overloading. The method that gets invoked is chosen by matching the types of the input parameters. Let's take a look at this. Suppose I have public void deposit that takes a double, and that double adds the amount to the balance. Oops, looks like I'm missing a semicolon here and here, but I remembered it here. Don't you make these mistakes. Put your semicolons in. All right, suppose I have another public void deposit, and this one takes an integer amount. So I could pass in 100.0, or I could just pass in 100. And this one says, yeah, let's add to the balance, but I'll convert that integer to a double. And let's say I have a deposit that doesn't take any parameters whatsoever, and in that case it always adds 100. Maybe the default deposit is $100. All of these could exist in the same class. There's no problem having a deposit and another deposit and another deposit all in the same class as long as the signatures are different. Or they could be spread among the subclass and the superclass. Maybe two of these are in checking account and one of them is in bank account. The one that gets executed is determined by the Java compiler based on what type of parameters are passed. You pass nothing, it uses this one that has no parameters. You pass it an integer, it uses this one that takes an integer, and so on. Now, many predefined classes have overloaded methods. We've already used them. Remember the substring method in the string class that we did last lesson? There were two versions. One version took one parameter. One version took two parameters. This one that took one parameter just says where the starting point of our substring is and go to the end of the string. The next one said where to start and where to stop our substring. The version that gets executed depends on how many parameters you sent it. So the people who wrote the string class for Java knew about overloading, and now you do too.